Hello guys, welcome back to Premier League predictions. We are back predicting Premier League games for this weekend, and as always I am joined by the wonderful Sophie.
Oh, thank you very much. How are you?
I suppose with my predictions being as bad as they can be, I've got to be nice to you because you could be really horrible to me right now.
Well, I could rub it in your face, but I'm eating humble pie actually.
There you go. Let's see who does better with the Premier League predictions this week. Before we get into the video, guys, you know the drill. Let's make sure we smash the like button. Let's go for 2,000 likes on this one. We set that as the like target last week, and we just didn't do it. 1,900, which is the third time this season we haven't done it. So please make sure to drop a like. It's free to do, and you're helping us out. Make sure while you're there, you subscribe. If you've not already, make sure to join the 57,000 legends that have already subscribed and help this channel grow as we are here predicting games every week. The final thing to mention, Sophie, is the scores from last week, where it was pretty close, to be honest. I'm still miles behind, so we'll just quickly run over those. Let's get into the predictions for this week, Sophie. Let's kickstart it with a West London derby, where it is Brentford versus Chelsea. This one already I'm struggling to predict, if I'm being honest, Sophie. Brentford, pretty solid. Chelsea, mid-table. What I will say is Chelsea, of course, involved in FA Cup action in midweek. Could that take it out of them? I think, you know, going 120 minutes with Liverpool on the Sunday will have also taken it out of them. But Brentford played on Monday, so there's not a massive amount of recovery time for them. One thing I will mention, Sophie, is that we both did back Liverpool to beat Chelsea in the Carabao Cup final. We both didn't get any points for it. I know you predicted 1-0, but you did specify that it'd be in 90 minutes, and you didn't mention extra time, which is usually what we do. We'd say if it's going to extra time penalties. So no points there. And as I said, we predicted Chelsea to lose. What did you make of it?
Do you know what? I felt like Chelsea were a good team at spells during the 90. Completely different team in the
Extra
added
time.
Yeah, they just... I don't know whether the adrenaline just completely dipped in the 15-minute break, and then they just didn't come out looking like they wanted to win it.
What didn't make sense to me is when Liverpool were taking stronger players off and bringing on younger players, that's when Liverpool seemed to get better and Chelsea got worse. But as you said, Chelsea did play well in spells of that game, and they did create chances. They just are a nearly team. They just can't take them. As for this game, Sophie, I'm going to start by sitting on the fence. 1-1.
Okay, I was tempted to say 1-1 as well. However, I feel like Chelsea have a point to prove now. You've just lost a cup final, which Poch is used to be honest. But you need to bounce back from that now, because you're sitting mid-table in the league. It's going to be a very poor season otherwise. And Brentford, they're a mid-table team as well, to be honest. So that's why I can see why you're back to draw. But I am going to lean towards Chelsea. 2-1.
2-1 Chelsea. There you go. We're already going in opposite directions for the first game there. Share your thoughts on Brentford versus Chelsea. Let's go to Goodison Park next, Sophie, for the David Moyes derby. It's Everton versus West Ham United. Speaking of David Moyes, we do need to mention that last week we did mention that before West Ham's game with Brentford that David Moyes is a manager under pressure, but they did offer him a new contract.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that.
There you go. In other news though, Everton have had 4 points added back on after their appeal for the first points deduction. What I will say about the relegation battle this season is it's really not that enjoyable in a way because of the confusing state of play with the points deductions and stuff. What we do know now is Everton's first deduction, which was 10 points, is now down to a 6-point deduction. They've had 4 added back on with the possibility of an appeal for that. And obviously, as I say, you've got to bear in mind them and Forest could also get more points deductions. It's a bit confusing, but in the meantime, I suppose it's good news in the short term. Everton have 4 points added back on, but it does look like the precedent will be that it's 6 points for the same punishment. So if they do get found guilty again, it'll be another 6 points off. It's really confusing. What I will say though on the pitch though is Everton played pretty well at Brighton last week. They nearly pinched all 3 points, but they did have to settle for a draw with Brighton scoring at the death. In this one, I think it'll be close. I think it'll be low scoring, and I'm going to give it to the team that need 3 points more desperately at the bottom of the table. Everton 1-0.
Yeah, I'm actually going for the same scoreline. Everton 1-0. I do see this being a little bit of a cagey one because both teams do need the points. What I hope doesn't happen with Everton is when they got the first points deduction, they had that fight in them. So I hope they don't have a little bit of complacency now that they've got a little bit more of a cushion. I don't think they're naive enough to do that. And they are going to fight in this one, and I can see them getting the 3 points. So 1-0 for me.
1-0. Both going for 1-0 to the Toffees over the Hammers. Next up, Sophie, let's go down to West London again. This time we're going to Craven Cottage as Fulham host Brighton. I'm not too sure, to be honest. What I've got to say is fair play to Fulham. They went away to Manchester United and they won right at the death with Alex Iwobi's winner. They played fairly well, so I think they deserved it, to be honest. They take on Brighton, who are always one of the more difficult teams to put your finger on.
Yeah.
Sometimes they really turn up and they look like a top 6 team. Sometimes they don't. And last week was an example of that, where they came into the game against Everton as strong favourites and didn't really go to plan. In this one, I don't know who the strong favourites are. I mean, there isn't really a strong favourite.
Yeah, I wouldn't say there is a strong favourite.
You could possibly say Brighton are slight favourites, but once again, I think this is very even. I'm not going to go for a draw, though. I'm going to reward Fulham for their win last week, and I'm going to say they win 2-1 again.
See, I'm actually tempted to sit on the fence and say a draw, just because Brighton are a good team, and then so are Fulham on their day as well. So I think they could cancel each other out in this one. So, sorry to be boring. 1-1.
There you go. 3 games in, and we've gone different for predictions on 2 of them. Look at that. We're not going the same this week. Let's go to the next game, Sophie. I think this is a really fun one. It's Newcastle United versus Wolverhampton Wanderers. Let's start with Newcastle, Sophie. They went away to the Emirates. We didn't think they'd get much. They did get a goal, but they also conceded 4 goals.
Yeah.
A 4-1 defeat. It was always a tricky game on paper. Arsenal are doing fantastic at the moment. We'll come on to them later. They take on Wolves, Sophie. We did back them to beat Sheffield United. They only did it 1-0, but it's 3 points nonetheless. And to be honest, as we've said many a times, they're having a really good season, whereas Newcastle are still having a decent season, but maybe just a little bit underwhelming compared to the levels they've set last season. I'm going to go for a draw on this one, Sophie, and I'm going to say high scoring. Newcastle 2, Wolves 2. I think it'd be a Desmond. 2 decent teams, really.
Yeah, for me, I like both these teams, to be honest. They're both good teams. I think the home advantage is going to sway me towards Newcastle here. I can see both teams getting on the score sheet. I'm going to say 2-1 Newcastle.
Okay. Yeah, so similar, I guess.
Yeah, fairly similar. But yeah, I just have to lean towards the home side on this one.
At the same time, can you see Wolves pinching this?
I could actually, yeah, just because Newcastle didn't look the best against Arsenal, but that was Arsenal who, in the league at the moment, they're flying. Wolves, again, are a decent team, so it's not impossible for them to win this one.
And of course, they've both been involved in FA Cup action in midweek. Newcastle having 1 day extra rest between their games and this one. On to the next one, Sophie. Let's go to the City Ground, where it is Nottingham Forest versus Liverpool. It's a really busy week here for Nottingham Forest, hosting both Manchester United and Liverpool. If you remember the Premier League game between these two last season at the City Ground, Forest beat Liverpool 1-0. It was a great result, of course, and that's when I really started to believe that Forest would stay up after a bit of a shaky start. This time round, though, it's unclear because, as we've said previously, the possible points deduction. What we will say, though, is now that we know Everton have been hit with a 6-point deduction for pretty much the same charge that Forest have got this time, I do think Forest are in for a possible 6-point deduction.
Yeah, I agree.
But at the same time, Everton could also get a second 6-point deduction. It looks really close between Forest, Luton and Everton. Liverpool come here, Sophie, as Carabao Cup winners. They're, of course, in FA Cup action in midweek. They are fighting on all 4 fronts and they are still going in the Premier League. Their most recent game in that being a 4-1 win over Luton Town. I do think Liverpool will win this one. As I've said previously, Forest are better at the City Ground than they are away from home. Forest 1, Liverpool 2. I think there'll be goals in this one, but I'm just leaning towards Liverpool, who've got to keep winning to win the title.
Yeah, I think Forest have to go all out in this one because Liverpool are completely injury struck and they picked up another one in the Carabao Cup final. So really, this is actually a good time for Forest to be playing them. I could see them winning this one, to be honest, but I'm not going to back it. I'm going to actually go for the same scoreline, 2-1 Liverpool. They've just got something about them at the moment that's just getting it over the line. Even if they're not putting in a good performance, they're still either getting the win or walk away with the 3 points. And I think it's going to be a similar story in this one. So 2-1 Liverpool.
Yeah, we're going the same. So we both think it'll be close, but Liverpool do have the ability to get it over the line.
Yeah.
Next up, Sophie, we'll go to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, a London derby between Spurs and Crystal Palace. It feels like a little while since we've seen Tottenham. They weren't involved in the FA Cup action in midweek. They weren't involved in the Premier League last week because they would have been playing Chelsea, who actually played in the Carabao Cup final last week. So they'll be well rested, or could they be rusty? They take on Crystal Palace, Sophie, who we've got to give a lot of credit to. They brushed aside Burnley 3-0. We did back them to win that, but it was more comfortable than we thought.
Yeah, that was quite a convincing performance, that.
Yeah, and a good start for the new manager, of course, we must say. I wouldn't entirely be surprised if they actually came and got something, but I will lean towards the favourites. It's just too much of a risk with us fighting for points here. I need to make sure I get as many right as possible, and I think Tottenham will win. I'm going to go 3-1.
Oh, I was tempted to say that as well, but do you know what? I'll say a tighter game just because I thought Palace put in a really good performance last week. So 2-1 Spurs, slightly closer game, but we're still back in the same winner.
Yeah, there we go. We think there'll be a few goals in that one. Tottenham do leave themselves open at the back, so
Exactly, yeah.
I do see Palace scoring, but we are going for Tottenham to win. Next up, so I'm tearing my hair out trying to predict this one as we go to Kenilworth Road. It's Luton Town versus Aston Villa. Now, it does feel like Aston Villa are back on track.
Yes, they've been doing very well in recent weeks.
Yeah, they derailed a few weeks ago, but they've got themselves back on the track and they look like the favourites to secure that 4th place. The top 3 do look like they're in their own world. Villa aren't a million miles behind them, but, you know, the most important thing really, if we're setting realistic expectations, is to secure top 4. Tottenham aren't a million miles behind, so Villa need to try and get the win here.
Yeah.
But Luton Town, Sophie, they're trying to stay up. They've obviously got their eyes on Forest and Everton and the possible points deductions that could come in April. Obviously, with Everton getting 4 points back at the moment, it makes Luton's situation look a little bit more desperate. What I will say, though, in their last Premier League game when they went away to Liverpool, is in the first 45 minutes, I thought they looked very good. It's just the quality of Liverpool that turned it around.
Yeah.
At Kenilworth Road, Sophie, I think Luton could get something. This game in the reverse was 3-1 to Villa at Villa Park. At Kenilworth Road, I reckon Luton might snatch a draw. Going to go 2-2.
Okay, I'm actually feeling very differently to you, you know. Just because Luton have a few of their best players out injured, and that does seem to be affecting them at the moment. Villa, as you've just mentioned, are back on track, and I think their form continues. 2-0 Villa.
Oh, so we are going quite different
Yeah,
then.
quite different there.
There you go. That makes things interesting, though. Let's see if Villa win, or it's a draw, or maybe if Luton Town win. On to the next one, Sophie. Let's go to Turf Moor, where it is Burnley versus AFC Bournemouth. I would have thought at the start of the season this could be a relegation 6-pointer, but it really isn't. Bournemouth are doing very well. Burnley are really bad at the moment.
Yeah, I think Bournemouth will feel a little bit hard done by to not even get a point against Man City, because towards the end of the game they did play well. Burnley are not playing well at all.
No, and to be honest, we haven't backed them for a few weeks, and for good reason.
Yeah.
They got absolutely smashed at Palace last week. They are back at home now, Sophie. If they can get something, it'd be a positive. There is a real risk that they could actually finish bottom after, you know, it looks like Sheffield United have been the worst team this season. Burnley aren't exactly doing much better, are they? Bournemouth, Sophie, yeah, as you said, they played well against Man City, and I'm going to go for them to get back to winning ways.
Yeah.
Burnley 1, Bournemouth 3.
Yeah, I was tempted to say the exact same scoreline. So do you know what? I'll give Bournemouth a clean sheet. I think it's going to be back-to-back 3-0 losses for Burnley, which at home is not good, and their goal difference week in, week out now is just taking a beating, and I can see the cherries doing them. 3-0.
Yeah, they just look miles apart, don't they, these two? I mean,
yeah. As
I said, at the start of the season, you'd have struggled to separate them. And I think last season in the FA Cup, when Burnley were doing so well in the league and the Championship, they did go away to Bournemouth and beat them, as I say, in the FA Cup. But they seem to be on completely different wavelengths this season. On to the next one, Sophie. It's a big one. Let's go to the Etihad. It's Manchester City versus Manchester United. I always do look forward to this one, Sophie. Manchester United's track record against Man City isn't that bad. They are one of the few teams that can take something off Man City. They didn't earlier this season, and I don't know if they will this time, but I feel like they'll give it a go. They did, of course, lose last week to Fulham, 2-1 in the Premier League. They are missing Højlund.
Yes, yeah, they have got a few injuries, and Højlund being a big miss as well.
Yeah, because he'd just come into form.
He had, yeah.
As for Man City, they weren't at their fluid best against Bournemouth, but the 3 points was the most important thing. And if we're going to give them credit, Bournemouth are a decent team, so just to get the 3 points there was important. They need to keep winning. Manchester City have got so much to play for if they want to stay in the title race with Liverpool and a very informed Arsenal. Let's go Man City 3, Man United 1. I think Manchester United will come and try and maybe get a goal, but Man City are just better, aren't they? Yeah,
I think what's going to sway this game for me is just Man United's injuries at the moment. So I don't know if their best 11 right now can really compete against Man City. So I'm going to say Man City 2-0.
Yeah, you don't think there'll be too many goals in this one?
Not really, no. Just because Man City's performances recently haven't been amazing. They should really, with the squad they've got, they should be wiping the floor with certain teams, but they're not at the moment. So I don't see there being masses of goals.
There you go. So slightly different, but the same deficit.
Yeah.
On to the final game then, Sophie. The Monday night game. It's at Bramall Lane. It's Sheffield United versus Arsenal. This could get ugly. We've said so many times this season that Sheffield United have been absolutely panned. They've been destroyed on so many occasions, and Arsenal are on a run of destroying teams. They've smashed Newcastle, they've smashed Palace, they've smashed Burnley, they've smashed West Ham. Their goal difference is going up and up and up. Whereas Sheffield United, as we've said, there's a real risk that they could be a team that get minus 100 goal difference, which would be astonishing. Let's just mention last week though, Sophie, it's daft to say this is a positive, but they only lost 1-0 to Wolves, which is, in the grand scheme of things, not the worst result.
Yeah, I know, but how bad must you be doing to say, oh, it's not too bad, you only lost 1-0? Still a loss when you're so far down.
I am clutching at the smallest straws possible there for Sheffield United. As I've said previously, there's been times this season where I've thought, let's give it a go, let's try and back them. I'm not going to do it here, Sophie. I would be very surprised if they can get anything. I'm going to go Arsenal 3-0, which I think is generous.
Yeah, that is. I'm not going to be generous at all, because Arsenal are just battering teams at the moment, and I feel like Sheffield United are going to take their battering this weekend. 5-0 Arsenal.
Ooh.
I don't even think it's that shocking. I was genuinely considering saying 7-0.
Goodness me. I mean, it really could be that kind of game, couldn't it?
Yeah.
I'm now starting to think my 3-0 looks a bit silly, but I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to have faith in Sheffield United that they only lose 3-0 on this occasion. There you go, guys. That wraps up our Premier League predictions. Do share your thoughts down in the comments with all your predictions for those 10 Premier League games. As I say, myself and Sophie like to look at your predictions down in the comments, so do get involved. Do make sure, of course, to hit the thumbs up button. 2,000 likes would be amazing. Help us do it by clicking the like button down below now, and make sure while you're there, you are subscribed. If you're not already, get involved. It's free to do. Thank you for joining me, Sophie.
Thank you.
We will see you guys in the next one. Peace out. If you are a fan of the channel and you like your predictions, make sure to look out for the Champions League and Europa League predictions coming out over the next couple of days. On top of that, we have also got the EFL Championship predictions for the midweek games coming out on Monday as well. There is so much football to come, so there's so many football videos to come. Make sure to subscribe so you get your football fix. We'll see you in the next one. Peace out.